at these times with me, only on DD India.
Good evening, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. After Trump orders additional tariffs on India, Prime Minister Modi says ready to pay heavy price but won't compromise on farmers' interest. New Delhi issues sharp rebuttal to United States on additional tariffs, calls it unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. A potential summit plan for Putin-Trump meet soon, following meeting of US envoy Witkoff with Russian president in Moscow. And first illegal immigrants detained under UK's new one-in, one-out deportation deal with France. Detainees to be held in immigration centres pending their removal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday reiterated India's stance of never compromising in the interest of its farmers, even if it means facing economic consequences. Prime Minister stressed that government has recognized farmer strength as the foundation of the nation's progress.
हमारे लिए अपने किसानों का हित सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है। भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा। मैं जानता हूं व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं। मेरे देश के किसानों के लिए, मेरे देश के मछुआरों के लिए, मेरे देश के पशुपालकों के लिए आज भारत तैयार है।
A firm and direct message from Prime Minister Narendra Modi to those trying to pressure India. Reaffirming his unwavering commitment to national interests, Prime Minister Modi made this declaration during an event dedicated to a man who led India's Green Revolution and made the nation self-reliant in food production.
प्रोफेसर M.S. स्वामीनाथन मां भारती के सपूत थे। उन्होंने विज्ञान को जन सेवा का माध्यम बनाया। उन्होंने वो चेतना जागृत की जो आने वाली कई सदियों तक भारत की नीतियों और प्राथमिकताओं को दिशा देती रहेगी।
Inaugurating the M.S. Swaminathan Centenary International Conference, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also released a commemorative coin and a postage stamp to mark the occasion. The theme of the conference was Evergreen Revolution, the Pathways for Biohappiness.
आज दुनिया भर में बायोडायवर्सिटी को लेकर चर्चा होती है। इसे सुरक्षित रखने के लिए सरकारें अनेक कदम उठा रही हैं, लेकिन डॉक्टर स्वामीनाथन ने एक कदम आगे बढ़ते हुए बायो हैप्पीनेस का आइडिया दिया। आज हम यहां इसी आइडिया को सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं।
Honoring the legacy of Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, the M.S. Swaminathan Research Foundation and the World Academy of Sciences have instituted the M.S. Swaminathan Award for Food Security and Peace. Prime Minister Narendra Modi presented the inaugural award to Professor Adrenal of Nigeria and called upon scientists to ensure nutrition security for all.
डॉक्टर स्वामीनाथन से प्रेरणा लेते हुए अब देश के वैज्ञानिकों के पास एक बार फिर इतिहास रचने का मौका है। पिछली पीढ़ी के वैज्ञानिकों ने फूड सिक्योरिटी सुनिश्चित की। अब न्यूट्रिशनल सिक्योरिटी पर फोकस करने की आवश्यकता है।
Prime Minister also urged greater integration of modern technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning into agriculture. Prime Minister Modi emphasized India's rich legacy of traditional farming knowledge and advocated for merging it with modern science to create a holistic agricultural ecosystem. Prime Minister Modi also urged young scientists and entrepreneurs to innovate for the welfare of farmers and help India lead in green production. Bureau Report, DD India.
India has reiterated its response against the United States' additional 25% tariff imposition, calling the actions unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. India fired back at Donald Trump's additional tariff move, saying that New Delhi had already made clear its stance on imports from Russia. In a statement, India's External Affairs Ministry said that the United States has in recent days targeted India's oil imports from Russia. The statement added that India has made clear its position on the issues, including the fact that India's imports are based on market factors and done with overall objective of ensuring the energy security of 1.4 billion people of the country. It is therefore extremely unfortunate that US should choose to impose additional tariffs on India for actions that several other countries are also taking in their own national interest. India reiterated that these actions are unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. The statement added that India will take all actions necessary to protect its national interests. Meanwhile, the Global Trade Research Institute, GTRI, has criticized the United States' decision to impose additional 25% tariff on Indian imports, calling it hypocritical, highlighting Washington's selective approach towards its allies in China when it comes to their trade relations with Moscow. The GTRI, in its statement, says that US had overlooked Russia's trade with European Union and China, noting selective enforcement on India, exposing Washington's hypocrisy. According to the data given by GTRI, China purchased $62.6 billion of Russian oil in 2024, surpassing India's $52.7 billion, yet Beijing faces no punitive tariffs. It also noted that US has turned a blind eye to European Union's $39.1 billion imports from Russia last year, including $25.2 billion in oil, while the US itself purchased $3.3 billion in strategic materials from Russia. It stated that the selective targeting not only threatens India's $86.5 billion in annual exports to the United States, but also raises questions about the credibility of US trade policy, as the move is expected to potentially reduce Indian exports to the US by 40% to 50%. In a major sign of growing global influence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Brazilian President Lula da Silva plans to call him to discuss the high tariffs being imposed by the United States on many countries of the global south, including India and Brazil. President Lula is also seeking more business and trade with India. DD India correspondent Shobhan Saxena gets us more from Sao Paulo.
Even as Brazil faces 50% tariff on its exports to the US, President Lula da Silva of Brazil is refusing to call US President Donald Trump to discuss the issue. Instead, the Brazilian leader has said he is looking forward to enhancing trade relations with countries like India. On Wednesday, in an important announcement, President Lula said he would call Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India to discuss the tariff issue and also to develop a common strategy to tackle the pressure coming from Washington. President Lula's call with PM Modi is expected to be followed by discussions with other members of the BRICS group as Brazil tries to buffer the impact of rising US protectionism. The Brazilian leader enjoys a great personal chemistry with the Indian Prime Minister, who has visited Brazil twice in recent times, for the G20 summit in November 2024 and for the BRICS meeting in July this year. Brazil currently holds the BRICS presidency. It will be India's turn to host the summit in 2026. On Wednesday, in an interview with a news agency, President Lula said he saw no room for direct talks with President Trump, which he believes would turn into a humiliation for him. He also said that the President of the United States trying to dictate rules for a sovereign country like Brazil is unacceptable to him. On the other hand, President Lula is quite optimistic about close relations with India. During PM Modi's state visit to Brasilia on July 8 this year, President Lula had said his country aims to triple trade flows with India from $12 billion last year. Now all eyes of the world are on the Indian Prime Minister as he gets an important call from a strategic partner.
And just days after EU and the US announced what appeared to be a breakthrough trade deal, confusion still clouds the European response. For more on how this is playing out across the continent, we are joined by DW correspondent Warda Imran in Berlin. Warda, let's start with Germany. How's it looking there?
In Europe remains tense and somewhat unclear. Despite the initial agreement and the handshake between Donald Trump and EU Commission's Ursula von der Leyen, there is still no formal, legally binding agreement in place. And this adds some anxiety among businesses here. In fact, EU exporters are still facing the 27% tariff rate. It was meant to go down to 15%, that was the agreement, and it was meant to start from August 1st, but there's no change there yet. German cars are still being tariffed at the higher rate. And just a day ago, Donald Trump threatened more tariffs on the EU if it did not comply with the investment promise of the deal. So while the trade deal between the two calmed initial fears of a potential trade war, this new phase comes with uncertainty on what the agreement actually is and how it's going to be implemented moving forward.
And there's also the energy purchasing agreement. How are the energy companies in the EU reacting to that?
Yes, exactly. These two parts, the billions worth of investment in the US and the billions worth of energy that the EU promised to import, both are big, fat, and somewhat unrealistic promises. And here's why. The US may not even be able to produce and export that much energy overnight. That's what CEO of Germany's largest energy company, RWE, said. The CEO also stressed that harsh market interventions will ultimately result in more expensive energy for European consumers and companies. The promise that the European Union made means tripling current energy exports, and that would require a lot of moving parts. So there's still a lot of uncertainty, and not everyone is happy with how the EU bowed down.
Warda, thank you. And Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov said on Thursday that Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump will meet in the coming days, with the two sides already having agreed the venue in principle. The announcement comes a day after Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, held talks with Putin. Ushakov also said a summit venue had been agreed but would be announced later. He said Witkoff had on Wednesday raised the possibility of a three-way meeting of Trump, Putin and Zelensky. But the Russian side had left this proposal completely without comment, adding that Russia is focused on preparing for a bilateral meet with Trump.
Speaking about the Ukrainian matters at the suggestion of the American side, an agreement was essentially reached to hold a bilateral meeting at the highest level in the coming days. That is, a meeting between President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump. We are now beginning with our American colleagues the concrete preparations together of the aspects of this meeting as well as its location. I will note, by the way, the location has been agreed in principle. We will inform about it sometime later.
And earlier, President Donald Trump had said the United States had held good talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin, adding that there was a good chance that he would hold meetings soon with the Russian leader. US envoy Steve Witkoff held talks with Putin earlier on Wednesday, which the Kremlin described as useful and constructive.
Putin and Zelensky agreed to a summit yet? And where and when would that be?
Well, there's a very good prospect that they will. And we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today. And there's a very good chance that we could be ending the round, ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to Germany's Friedrich Merz on Thursday to discuss developments after US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met the Russian president. Both leaders hailed the mediation efforts of US President Trump and reiterated that they would continue exchanging closely with European partners and the US. Meanwhile, Zelensky informed that top security advisors of Ukraine, Europe and US will hold an online meet on Thursday. Britain has begun detaining migrants under a new return deal with France aimed at curbing small boat crossings. The one-in, one-out pilot scheme agreed last month allows Britain to return the undocumented arrivals to France while accepting an equal number of legitimate asylum seekers with family ties in the UK. So far this year, over 25,000 people have crossed the channel in small boats. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has vowed to smash the gangs of people smugglers and bring down the rising numbers.
Well, the pilot has now begun, and the first migrants who arrived on small boat are now in detention. That is the first step to removing them to France, because no one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people. Well, the pilot has now begun, and
On to some other stories. The air quality of Chicago deteriorated because of Canadian wildfire. Folks facing a lot of problems and health issues. More than 700 wildfires are currently blazing across Canada. Recently, Chicago City was ranked among the most polluted major cities in the world. Turkey's Kahramanmaraş Museum reopened after months of closure, home to some 30,000 artifacts that shed light on the region's rich history. The museum now features upgraded safety measures to better protect its exhibits from future seismic risks. The museum had been closed on February 6 following devastating earthquake. Brazilian fishing industry is worried about the impact of US tariffs as they brace for more job losses and bankruptcies. The major cause of worry is export restriction, forcing them to sell most of their produce to the United States. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Thailand and Cambodia agreed to extend truce deal reached last week. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet expected to approve fresh plans for the continuation of the conflict in Gaza.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you. You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Thailand and Cambodia agreed upon extending an ongoing ceasefire reached between them last week after a fierce military engagement. The ceasefire had been brokered in the last week of July after 5-day-long violent clashes between both the sides. The latest developments came on Thursday after Thai Deputy Defence Minister Nathapon Natphanit and Cambodian Defence Minister Thesia signed a joint statement where both sides agreed to halt all movement along the border. They've also agreed to have ASEAN observers to ensure ceasefire holds. The statements also made provision for another meeting within a month. Both sides have also agreed to avoid misinformation to ensure de-escalation of tensions. Both countries have been witnessing one of the deadliest clashes last month, forcing some 300,000 people on both sides to flee for safety. The latest clashes claimed 43 lives after tensions flared on borders over disputed temples claimed by both sides. On to some other stories. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will convene his security cabinet on Thursday at his office in Jerusalem, according to Prime Minister's office. During the meeting, the cabinet is expected to approve the fresh plans for continuation of the conflict in Gaza, full military occupation of the Strip, and will instruct the military to meet all the goals. Meanwhile, the Egyptian Red Crescent Society said on Wednesday that nearly 1,008 trucks have entered Gaza through the Rafah border crossings in the past couple of weeks. It further added that so far, 800 out of nearly 1,000 trucks that crossed the border arrived at destination in Gaza. Kangana Ranaut, the famous Bollywood actress and the MP from Himachal Pradesh's Mandi, visited the India International Handwoven Expo on the occasion of the 11th Handloom Day. She not only hailed the evolving landscape of handloom in the country going global, but also talked about how the country is seeing handloom as India's pride under leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Yes, more.
The Indian Handloom Day, and we have with us the celebrated actress as well as the MP from Himachal Pradesh Mandi. Good afternoon, Kangana ji. First of all, what are your thoughts on celebrating Indian Handloom Day? We also got to know that you also shopped a lot, and especially from the grassroots level, promoting the Indian artisans.
So this particular event has been started by Bharatiya Janata Party और इनकी 11th ये anniversary है, and जैसे एक overall upliftment of economy, of people, or especially those who have been wronged, who've been left behind, who've been ignored, neglected, तो उसका जो उद्धार करने के लिए है ना, जो प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी कहते हैं, जिनको कोई नहीं पूछता उनको मैं पूछता हूँ, तो आई थिंक हमारे जो आर्टिसंस हैं, हमारे जो कारीगर है तो वो हमारी सबसे बड़ी एक तो पहचान थी। प्राचीन भारत में मैं कहूँगी जब हमारी इकोनॉमी, हमारी जो अर्थव्यवस्था सबसे बड़ी थी वर्ल्ड में, उस टाइम हम लोग सबसे बड़े प्रोड्यूसर्स थे कपड़े के। प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जो ये इनिशिएटिव लिया है और ये इतनी गहन इसकी जो चिंता की है, आज भी हमने बहुत ज़्यादा हैंडीक्राफ्ट्समैन को जो है वो अवार्ड्स दिए, उनको प्रोत्साहित किया, उनको इंसेंटिव्स मिलते हैं, उनको जो है बहुत ज़्यादा सब्सिडीज़ मिलती हैं। और हमारी यही एक लोगों से अपील है कि आप अगर आज देखें एनवायरनमेंट को लेकर जो कार्बन फुटप्रिंट है, वो हमारा जो अपना हाथ से बनाया हुआ कपड़ा है, चाहे वो खादी हो, चाहे वो कोई और वीव हो, उसको अपनाएं। जब भी आप अपने एक आत्मनिर्भर भारत की कोई चीज़ को अपनाते हैं तो आप ना जाने कितने परिवारों को जो है वो सपोर्ट करते हैं। तो इसी उद्देश्य से आज भी हम यहाँ आए हुए हैं।
मैम, यू टुक अ टूर ऑफ इट, व्हाट हैज़ बीन योर फेवरेट पार्ट सो फार?
देखिए, हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स जो है मेरे लिए तो मैं तो एक आर्टिस्ट हूँ और मेरे लिए द फिनांस ऑफ वर्क एंड द एस्थेटिक अपील ऑफ एनी, वेदर इट इज़ गारमेंट और बैग और ड्रग और सो मैं तो खैर उसमें बहुत ही बह जाती हूँ। एक बार आपको जब इस चीज़ की चेतना होती है कि भाई हमारे खुद के कपड़े कितने अच्छे हैं, हमारे खुद के गारमेंट, और आपको कितना बेहतरीन आप दुनिया में लगते हैं, तो आप वो सब आप त्याग देते हैं। तो मैं चाहूँगी कि हमारे जो नई पीढ़ी है, हर नई जनरेशन है, वो ऑर्गेनिक फैब्रिक को जो है, क्योंकि ये स्किन के लिए, एनवायरनमेंट के लिए अर्थ फ्रेंडली है, उसको अपनाएं।
All right, thank you so much, ma'am. So there you heard Kangana Ranaut, the MP from Himachal Pradesh Mandi, taking a tour of the handloom on the Handloom Day of the Expo, which is the Business to Business International Expo has been placed, and also she hailed that how important the handloom products are for every citizen. With camera person Srinivas, this is Deepika reporting for the...
In sports, New Zealand's Test skipper Tom Latham was ruled out of the second and final test of the series against Zimbabwe due to a shoulder injury. Latham had been undergoing rehabilitation but has been unable to recover in time for the series decider. In his absence, Mitchell Santana will continue to lead the side. New Zealand went 1-0 up after securing an emphatic 9-wicket win in the first test. The tourists also missed the services of pacer Bill Rourke and all-rounder Nathan Smith. Both are featured in the first test but have been ruled out due to injury in the lead-up to the second. England Test captain Ben Stokes has joined Northern Superchargers in the 100 as a mentor. Stokes, who played 5 games for Superchargers across the 2021 and 24 tournaments, will join the men's team for the duration of this year's competition. Having sustained a shoulder injury that ruled him out of the 5th test between England and India, Stokes would not have been fit to play in any case. However, the 34-year-old will still hope to make an impact by providing his expertise as he joins the head coach Andrew Flintoff's backroom staff at the Superchargers. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan this QR code on your screens and download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.
Can the US launch a bombing